So something unusual has happened. Thanks to the One Piece official sticker book, we now have an official Jolly Roger for one Dracula Mihawk, despite him being a pirate but not necessarily having a pirate crew. This is a very interesting development because the Cross Guild Jolly Roger does reference Yoru in reference to Mihawk. And his personal Jolly Roger does too, but there's a bit of a separation here. Because in the Cross Guild Jolly Roger, things make a bit more sense because you have Buggy's head on top, you have the wings and crossing swords of the Baroque Works Jolly Roger, and then you have the Yoru in the back of the Jolly Roger. It makes perfect sense. However, when you go to Mihawk's new official Jolly Roger, it's a skull that looks like Mihawk. It has the menacing eyes of Mihawk, and it has Mihawk's hat. But the weird part is when you get to the objects acting as the crossbones for the Jolly Roger. Those being two Yoru's blades. Two versions of Mihawk's famous black blade are the crossbones for his Jolly Roger. Now, at first glance, this isn't a big deal, and this would one would probably expect it to be. But honestly, it is kind of weird when you consider why is the Yoru treated in a particular way in the Cross Guild Jolly Roger being singular by itself, solo as a monument to its user, whereas with the personal Jolly Roger for the man himself, we get two versions of his famous blade. It doesn't really make sense. And what's weird too is that the feather on his hat is covering the hilt of one of the blades, which is also odd, but that might not mean anything. The real crux of the weirdness here is that there are two versions of the blade, which suggests some interesting things about Mihawk. Because one, we know that he uses two blades in combat, but they're very, very different. One is the dagger that he keeps in the crucifix around his neck, and the other, of course, is the Yoru. But this kind of brings up a thought that I've had for a long time. What if the Yoru technically isn't his blade? What I mean by that is, what if he wasn't the one who turned the blade black? I know he's had the Yoru since he was 19, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's also a very weird development that Zoro came to his island with Susui, a black blade that was once wielded by a very, very renowned swordsman. And I don't recall Mihawk mentioning its weirdness in any way, shape, or form. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I don't recall that ever being a thing between Mihawk and Zoro. Mihawk does instruct Zoro about how to turn his blades black with Haki, but he never tells him about the whole process of making your blade permanently black. So that's really weird. I mean, we automatically think that seeing as how Mihawk has always had this blade, he was the one who turned it black. But if he's going to be sort of like a foil or a mirror to Zoro, well, he could have gotten a blade from somebody else, like Zoro got a black blade from somebody else. Just because he's wielding a black blade doesn't necessarily mean he was the one who turned it black. Therefore, he might not have the amount of respect that a user who turned his blade black originally would have, which is why he represents the blade in this way in his Jolly Roger. It's also weird too that the greatest swordsman in the world doesn't keep his sword in a sheath. I brought that up like a year ago, but that's also a weird thing about Yoru. He just has it out exposed to the elements, which I think is just kind of weird within itself. But yeah, that is Mihawk's Jolly Roger. It's weird, and I wonder if this will mean something more in the future, because you know this is going to rework itself back into the manga. There's no doubt. It's official artwork. But with that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede Works It.